Joining us now in his usual Monday spot, but I wasn't here. Now he's here on a Tuesday. He's the two-time Super Bowl champ and the host of Greenlight Podcast, Chris Long. How you doing, Chris?
Rich, what's up, man? How are you?
I'm hanging in there. I'm a little jet lagged, not going to lie, but that was incredible. Did you ever play internationally, Chris? Did you ever do that?
I did. Allegedly twice. One time I don't remember. Tom Brady beat us like 44-7.
Right.
So I blacked that out. But then we played against Jacksonville, which is basically like a road game because Jacksonville is like a damn home team in London. And we beat them in London in my last year in the league. So a couple times, and it was awesome. But that Germany atmosphere was like, you could just feel it.
It was unreal. I'll never forget it. You know, I know Brady said afterwards, and we'll play that soundbite later, that it was one of the greatest football experiences he's ever had. And, I have to concur. It was unbelievable. The league's going to have to go back. And then when the game was over, I started watching the 1 o'clock Eastern games, which there is 7 o'clock. It's prime time. And I think that's why the Germans are, can get into the sport, at least know it too. It's right there, prime time.
Yeah, prime time football and big pitchers of beer. Everybody was carrying around these big Das Boot kind of beer mugs at the stadium. That was amazing.
Yeah, I know. So let's get into it. The Vikings, how real are they, Chris? How real are the Vikings?
You got to give it to them. They're real. I mean, you go on the road and you beat that team. Now, listen, this year the NFL's down, right? There's some teams that are starting to round into form, and actually there's some real good teams at the top, but a lot of bad teams this year. So some of these teams that are reeling off wins, for good reason, we question them. Minnesota goes to Philly on a Monday night, and they get kind of blanked early in the season. I think that just sticks in people's minds. And then here's their big stage, right? They go right down the field, and for me, the whole week I thought Josh Allen wasn't playing. The way the line was moving, the way people were talking about it. And for him to play, period, speaks to kind of his mentality and the way he played. But, they come out and they punch him right in the mouth and score, and then next thing you know, they're down 27-10. And I thought one of the biggest plays of the game, now Justin Jefferson gets a lot of credit for the balls he caught, but the Dalvin Cook touchdown, when you're down 27-10, you need a quick score. It hasn't been going well for you. It doesn't feel like you can stop Buffalo. And you reel off that 80-yard run or whatever it was. Justin Jefferson had a huge block on that play. So, not just what he did on the 4th and 18, the back shoulder ball in overtime, everything in between, bailing Kirk out at times, who made some big throws. But it was really about Justin Jefferson and the day he had. And the Vikings are absolutely for real. I mean, they are. That's a really tough environment to go into and win. And if you're the Bills, you're good. You're a top 5 team. You might be the best team in the league when everybody's healthy. But Josh has got to make the right decisions. And, he almost threw a pick the first drive of the game. He's been erratic the past couple weeks. I don't think it's all health. I think some of it's just decision-making. I don't care about the 4th and 2. Some people were rolling that, B-roll over talking about his poor decision-making. But the 4th and 2, he's got to throw that ball. It's the second down play on overtime.
Right.
There's just no need to force that ball in, and the Bills go down again, and it's because of bad decision making.
And now the Week 2 win for the Eagles over the Vikings is what's keeping the Eagles in the top spot in the NFC, because they have the same record now based on what we saw from the Commanders last night. Your 2 cents on how we should view the Eagles now after 9 weeks. Chris Long.
I don't look at them much different. Now, it depends on how you looked at them before. They're a really, really, really good team. They might be the best team in the league. But this was coming. They weren't going to skate all the way to the playoffs, and it's better they don't. And this is not a game that surprised me. I mean, them losing the game probably surprised me a little bit, but you knew this was going to be a battle. That defensive front, you talk about Terry McLaurin, the way Heineke's playing. They really have found a little lightning in the bottle with Heineke and McLaurin. That connection's really great, and they played tough and they ran the football, and that's something that with Jordan Davis out, the Eagles are going to have to figure out a way to shore that up. Whether it's bringing in a veteran who might be out there on the street somewhere, to shore up that defensive line and stop these explosive runs. And the way that, like, Washington never, it wasn't even all the explosives. It was just possessing that football. I mean, there was a time I looked up and I couldn't believe the time of possession. And so you keep the ball away from Jalen, which keeps him from getting in a rhythm. Obviously, the refs missed the face mask and everything, but the Eagles lost this game fair and square. They made a lot of mistakes. The Quez Watkins fumble, obviously Brandon's penalty at the end of the game. This is uncharacteristic of this team, but they have great leadership. Listen to these guys at the podium after the game. You got Jalen Hurts saying all the right things, and not just things that fans think are the right things, like players know when they watch that press conference. This guy is a leader. And the same thing with Brandon standing tall at his locker and being like, hey, that's my fault. I got to be better there. I don't love the call, but I got to be better there. I think this team's going to be fine. And I'm not surprised that Washington, who deserves a lot of credit, came in there and beat him. I mean, this was just one of those games, and it's the NFC East. And I want to say this, Scott Turner was great last night, and that was a guy that I really doubted when they made that hire. He's been very good at times, and I think when you got Heineke in that lineup, it's hard to go back, right? I don't think you go back at this point to Carson.
No way. No, with all due respect, I should always front load the disrespectful with that. No shot. I mean, that's. Yeah. Although you can never tell in the NFL, but in terms of just injury, barring injury, I mean, this is Heineke's gig right now. I mean, they've won 4 or 5, and if they can run the ball like they ran it and play defense, they're getting Chase Young back. They've got a shot at that 7th wild card spot for sure, if not better.
Oh yeah. I mean, hey, listen, this was a team a couple years ago that was right in it with Tampa. I think the year Tampa won the Super Bowl, and they played them really tough in that wild card game. I think it was one of those late games, wild card weekend, where you're like, man, enough. I've seen enough football today, if that's possible. But for those who stuck around and watched that Tampa Washington game, which was a bizarre game, they were in it, and so I think they're better than they were at that point. And the back end has stepped up and made some plays, and I really like the way that St. Juice kid battled last week against Justin Jefferson. He made a big play, stripping the ball at Quez Watkins last night. Like, they just, Jonathan Allen, throwing Landon Dickerson out of the club. Like, this is a good football team, and the coaches, a lot of us thought was done early in the season, maybe. No, not so.
Chris Long, 2-time Super Bowl champ, Greenlight podcast host here on the Rich Eisen Show. And, I mean, this league is as unpredictable and wide open as ever. I mean, who'd have thought it? We're going to enter Week 11. Both the Bills and Cowboys are third-place teams. That's a fact. Right.
Yeah.
And both Bays that a lot of people were discounting 2-3 weeks ago. I mean, I saw Tampa Bay with my own 2 eyes, man. That's the stuff we're looking for. The running attack was significant for a change. And Brady was lighting it up. And then Christian Watson shows up, and he's suddenly counting on his fingers like he's Tyreek Hill with all the number of touchdowns that he had. So which Bay do you think has the better shot moving forward?
Man, I'm going to stick to my guns on this one, and I may be wrong. I think Tampa, because of the division they're in, they're going to be in the playoffs, right? But it's hard for me to imagine them making a run. I could be wrong, and I'm going to be pulling for Tom. I really am, because I respect Tom a lot. And I think it's fun to see him in an actual underdog situation. I remember when he was in New England, Jules and him, especially Julian, he loved to, we're underdogs this week. People are counting us out. Like, no, they're not. You're New England. Like, no, you're not. So Tom wants to be an underdog. He's an underdog now, and I will be pulling for him. But there's just a lot that has to happen for that team to come together and make a run. I think Green Bay, and this isn't being reactive because I've said all year, I just feel like, and this is even after the Dobbs injury, if they can figure some things out, if Watson is more confident now, if Rodgers is more confident in him, I mean, that ball had to hang up in the air on that 75-yarder so long for that kid. After the ball he dropped in Minnesota and everything, all the baggage, listen to Aaron in the post-game pressers. I mean, that was about as pressure-packed, quote-unquote, easy catch as there was. And it really wasn't that easy. He had to track the ball. And then the other two, I mean, he adds a different element to that offense. The way, I mean, watch him attack that single high safety on that long touchdown, and the panic that ensues when you realize how long his stride is and how fluid he is, and just what he adds to that offense. I think Romeo Doubs being hurt, it's a shame. Aaron Jones looked awesome. I don't want to count the Packers out. You know, I'm not saying that they can make a run and win the whole damn thing, because that would be backpedaling. I don't think they can. But they could make a little run here, and they could improve.
And, you know, while we're on the subject of you can't make it up, how the hell did the Raiders lose that game? And I know that Jeff Saturday has a significant history with the Colts as a player. Their play caller had never done it before, ever done it before. And I think the one thing that Saturday did significantly, other than just making the guys in the room believe him, was to go, from what I think, to Jim Irsay and say, we got to play Matt Ryan. I don't know what we're doing here, but you want to talk about what you wanted, how to win and what the locker room wants. This is what happens. But for Matt Ryan to rip off a 39-yard run on 3rd and 3 when the game is on the line, I don't know what the hell is happening in Vegas.
Right, he went 17 miles an hour.
Look, man, I shouldn't. As a 53-year-old man with a lot of ish going on, you know, who runs, you know, once a year, I shouldn't comment. But so how did you interpret the comments from Derek Carr and what he had to say after the game and the vote of confidence that Josh McDaniels has? Walk me through that from your perspective.
No, man, I don't know what's going on there. I mean, obviously not having Waller for stretches hurts. You know, obviously not as good as we thought they were, period, but there's no way that they're this bad. And that ultimately falls on the shoulders of coaching and how you get these guys ready to play and prepare and motivate them. And, you know, I also want to be fair to Josh in a little bit, because I think people looked at it like he was you know, hopping into a sports car and just driving it off the lot because they were a playoff team last year. Like, they won a lot of close games last year. And they had a little magic and that whole thing, and they pulled together through some tough times and some tragedy and all that stuff. But that's a tough team. But, you know, I just think we overestimated their ceiling, myself included. And here they are, man, and it's tough. I mean, to lose that game to Indy with everything that people have been talking about, listen, just because they won that game doesn't mean the hiring process is totally unorthodox and probably offended some longtime NFL coaches. I know there's this whole, you know, victory lap that's being taken by some media members that seem to be pushing back on anybody who would be kind of a little bit confused by the hire. But you beat the Raiders. Now you're going to get the Eagles, and they're going to be pissed off this week. And they're having trouble stopping the run. So you want to prove to everybody, Jim, you know, fans of the hire, that this is the right hire. Go do this. You know what I mean? I like Jeff Saturday, man. Like, you find me somebody on the planet that doesn't like Jeff Saturday, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I hope it works out. And, you know, I do think that if there's anybody who can stick the landing on this thing, it might be him, because ultimately NFL coaches, they have a lot of decisions to make, more than people realize. But at the same time, if you have a certain level of humility, you can delegate. And I think that's what some coaches struggle to do, and I think it's their Achilles heel. So he might not have a big resume or a background, and hey, point stands. Like, that's a little jacked up for a lot of the guys in that locker room who've been, you know, sitting in training camp and all that stuff. I think there is some validity to some of these monologues I've seen, albeit they're a little bit dramatic, right? But you know, Jeff Saturday, if he can delegate and he can be humble, he might have a leg up on some of these lifetime coaches, you know, that say, hey, that's not my area, and I'm going to delegate this to this offensive coordinator, this defensive coordinator, and I know the value of the coaches I have in the room. If he can do that, you know, they're going to have a fighting chance, because they're playing Matt Ryan, like you said. That's the biggest thing. And, you know, that's also interesting because they're risking $17 million.
No question. And I was kind of surprised that he was warming up and then got the start, because I thought that was the reason why. I mean, if you're Frank Reich, you're like, really?
Yeah.
You're playing him now? Like, really? Is that what's happening?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and that may have been Jeff Saturday's most important contribution to the 2022 Colts right off the bat. Is that he got Matt Ryan out of the mothballs that I thought he was going to be in for the rest of the time.
Absolutely. And one more thing, Rich, like while we're on this this game between two sub-500 teams.
Sure. No, but it's a fascinating part of the week, that's for sure.
It really is, and it just keeps up because I was talking to Robert Mathis Sunday night. He was in Vegas, and we were doing my show, and he joined us for a little bit, and I was expecting some canned answers on, this whole thing on Saturday, but he thinks that this is Irsay's way of begging Peyton to come home. Not begging, but trying to show Peyton that there'd be a place for him in the front office or that sort of thing. So getting, your guys back. Hey, look, I'm hiring Jeff Saturday. Come home, Peyton. So that was an interesting take from Robert Mathis.
I don't know, man. Peyton Manning gets to call Monday Night Football games from his own bed, from his own house with his brother. For his own production company, he doesn't pay a dime for the rights to do it. I mean, the
delay on that. It's really tough. He's got to be here. Do you know how tough that is to be on the Manning cast? Well, because you're on TV all the time. But there's a slight delay. There's three people talking. That's got to really wear on the guy.
Yeah, he has got the broadcast table wired, if you want to use a Vegas term right now. I don't know why he'd want to just go, unless he wants the challenge. Before I let you go, sir, I want to give you the floor on your alma mater and the dreadful, I know we use the word tragedy when there's a shooting, but there's too many damn of these tragedies in the world, and it has now hit Charlottesville, which, as we all know, is still dealing with the wounds of years ago when the Klan and white supremacists took over that town. But 3 members of the Cavaliers football team cut down by another kid who played for the program. I saw your statement, but I do want you to put some words to it, if you don't mind, about what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's first off, you said it, words, they don't mean anything in a situation like this. There's no, I was sitting there trying to type something out because I was numb. I mean, I was really numb to it. I mean, and again, that's a word that I hear all the time. Like, I'm numb, people are numb, and you don't know what it means until the proximity is really close to you, I feel like. And, I'm trying to type something out, and I legitimately don't have the words. Every word you type is not sufficient, numb included, devastated, crushed, whatever it is. And, the proximity is pretty close to me and my family. And Charlottesville's a small town, it's a college town, and the program's pretty tight-knit. And, one of my best friends in the world, Marcus Hagans, coaches the receivers, so it's like he's lost family members. He cared about these kids so much. And the 3 of them were, such bright kids. And there's, still a player fighting, for his life in the hospital, going through surgeries and that sort of thing. It's such an ugly feeling, I mean, life is short. People die. There are terrible surprises. And the older you get, I feel like you see more and more of it, and you get used to it, but you never get used to this, where somebody just takes somebody's life. And these 3 kids were so bright. I mean, I got to know Lavelle Davis pretty good, just because he was so close to Marcus and that family, and he was just such a wonderful kid. And it's these kids bust their ass and they sacrifice so much to play this game and represent their universities, and to think when you're getting ready to go home for Thanksgiving or Christmas and one day you get shot. I mean, it's the saddest thing in the world, man. And it's going to really test the resolve of this community. But I think Virginia students, Charlottesville, the athletic department, man, there's a lot of strong people here, and they'll try to rally around one another. But the words don't really do it justice. They really don't. I mean, it's been a long couple days for people around here.
Chris, I appreciate your contribution every week, and obviously your words here. Even though as you point out, words are not sufficient, action really is, and so I appreciate the time. As always, send my best to your colleagues and comrades in that program. And
Thanks, Rich.
and normally I end by saying who's going to be on your pod this week, but I already know that's going to be
Rich Eisen.
That's me. That's me. How'd you book him? How'd you get him? It's a tough guy. Tough guy.
You're my guy.
Right back at you. Right back at you, Chris. I look forward to doing that later. And everybody check out the Green Light podcast with Chris Long and me this week. How about them 2 cents?
It'll be out tomorrow. Folks.
Fantastic. I'll chat with you later in the day, Chris. Thanks for today, as always.
Thank you.
That's Chris Long right here on The Rich Eisen Show. Catch The Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.